The wind howled through the wooden slats of the frontier auction square, whipping dust through the air like bitter memories. Boots thudded against the boards, heavy, impatient. A girl stumbled, dragged by the wrist. Clara, 15 years old, face swollen from last night's blows. Her eyes weren't wet anymore. They were past crying, hollow, fixed on the crowd that wouldn't meet them. A voice, low and deliberate, echoed as if from the land itself. In a time when a girl's worth was judged by her womb, Clara had committed the greatest sin. She could not give life, so her parents took hers away. The crowd watched in silence as her father, a stern-faced man with sun-baked skin and a mouth that never smiled, led her toward a wagon loaded with supplies. Her mother stood behind them, veil covering her face, not out of shame but indifference. Clara's curse had cost them 2 would-be grandchildren, so they claimed. Miscarriages that the village midwife couldn't explain. The whispers began, and the judgment followed. In this God-fearing town nestled near the edge of the Wyoming wilderness, women were expected to marry young and birth many. When Clara bled wrong one too many times, her value sank like a stone in the well. Her mother muttered prayers under her breath. Her father found a merchant from back east, coarse, reeking of tobacco, and made a deal as cold as the snow coming that winter. 2 sacks of grain. A clean rifle. That's all it took. The exchange happened in broad daylight. The merchant spat into his palm, shook the father's hand, and took Clara by the arm. She fought, screamed and kicked, but no one intervened. A slap to the face quieted her. Then the rope came, coarse, knotted around her wrists. Someone was watching. A man, leaning against a hitching post at the edge of the square. He wore a coat that had seen too many winters and eyes like scorched earth. He didn't blink when Clara was dragged past him. That night, beneath a sky swollen with clouds, Clara gnawed through the rope with her teeth. The merchant had tied her to the side of the wagon, just beyond the town's edge. He'd drunk himself into a stupor. She waited until his snores turned deep and stupid. Then she slipped away, her wrists bleeding, feet bare. The trees took her in. Rain poured, not the gentle kind. It hit the leaves like bullets. Branches clawed her arms as she ran, branches and maybe something else. The forest had sounds she didn't recognize. Cracks in the brush. A low growl far off, then closer, eyes flickering in the dark. Wolves. She climbed. A young pine, barely strong enough to hold her. It swayed under her weight. She pressed herself against the trunk, hugging it as wind screamed through the canopy. The rain turned to sleet. Her nightgown soaked and stuck to her like ice. She didn't sleep. She didn't move. By morning, her limbs were numb. She tried to, climbed down and slipped. The world spun as she fell through wet branches, crashing into the mud below. Her head hit something hard. When she opened her eyes again, there was a ceiling above her. Wooden beams, patched with moss. A fire crackled. To her right, the smell of meat. Her body throbbed. Bruises bloomed across her arms, legs, ribs. She coughed, tried to sit up, and pain screamed through her side. A man stood nearby, stirring something in a pot. It was him, the one from the square. He didn't speak. He handed her a tin cup filled with broth. She stared at it like it was poisoned. "Drink," he said. One word. Deep, but not cruel. She did. The warmth almost hurt. She drank slowly, watching him. He didn't ask her name, didn't touch her. Just went back to the stew. She turned her head. 4 children. 2 boys. 2 girls. All of them stared at her from behind a doorway curtain. Dirty cheeks. Wide eyes. They didn't move. Didn't smile. She asked, "Where am I?" The man glanced at her. "Cabin." Her mind swirled. She tried to swing her legs off the bed. They refused to move. Her body crumpled back. "Why?" she rasped. He didn't answer, just ladled stew into another bowl and handed it to one of the children. A small girl with tangled blonde hair took it with both hands and disappeared. The man looked at Clara again, not with softness, not with hardness either, like he was still deciding something. "Sleep," he said. And she did. The days bled together like ink in water. Clara moved through them slowly, her body stiff with pain, the dull ache of healing worse than the sharp pain of injury. Jonas tended her wounds without ceremony, wrapping cloth around her ribs, dabbing, salve on her arms, changing bloodied dressings with hands that were rough but deliberate. He never said much. Neither did the children. They watched her like one might observe a strange bird or a wounded fox, curious, but from a distance. Martha, the oldest, lingered closest. Eli followed, usually with a slingshot at his hip. Thomas, just 6, was more shadow than boy, and little Bess often clung to her sister's skirts, sucking her thumb in silence. There was no welcome, but no rejection either. Just eyes and the quiet rhythm of survival. Clara stayed, at first because she couldn't leave, then slowly because the silence began to feel different, less like punishment, more like permission. She started helping where she could, peeling potatoes, washing clothes in freezing creek water, mending worn-out socks. She spoke softly to the children, though they rarely answered. She swept the floor, darned the blankets, fed the chickens. One day she found Jonas splitting wood in the yard and asked if she could help. He handed her an axe. She dropped it after the first swing and winced as he chuckled almost soundlessly, then demonstrated without speaking. She tried again, and again. Her palms bled, but the rhythm felt good, like control, like doing something that mattered. In a small drawer by the hearth, Clara found a yellowed photograph wrapped in oilcloth. It showed a young woman with solemn eyes and high cheekbones. There was a softness in her gaze, but her mouth held firm. Clara studied it, breath catching. The woman looked startlingly like her. When Jonas walked in and saw her holding it, he didn't speak. He just looked at the photograph for a long time, then took it gently from Clara's hands and put it away. He didn't say who she was. He didn't need to. The cabin sat at the edge of nowhere where the trees grew thick and shadows came early. The forest became her world, its sounds, its secrets, the invisible rules of its creatures. In that silence, something unspoken began to shift. One morning, Clara found an old Bible in a trunk beneath the floorboards. Its cover was cracked, the first half burned away. Still, there were enough pages to teach from. She sat with the children by the hearth and taught them letters using a charcoal stub. At first, they fidgeted, confused by her patience. Then they began tracing words with their fingers. Martha caught on quickest, always correcting the others. Jonas watched from the table, knife carving against wood. He didn't stop her. Weeks passed. The snow fell in quiet curtains, softening the world outside. Jonas built Clara a bed, not a mat on the floor, an actual bed, hand-hewn from pine. Its legs were uneven, but sturdy. He didn't say a word as he set it up, just nodded once. Clara's voice softened when she spoke. Her laughter, rare as it was, came one night when Thomas tripped over the dog and knocked over a pot of stew. The kids froze, afraid, until Clara burst out laughing. Then they all joined in. Even Jonas allowed himself a faint smile. Martha began calling her Claire. Not quite Clara, not quite something else, just hers. There were no big moments, no revelations, just time passing, and the quiet weaving of new threads between broken hearts. Then came the men. Clara had gone with Martha to gather late berries near the stream when she saw them. 3 riders in ragged coats, their horses frothing, rifles slung across their backs. One spat something she couldn't hear and pointed toward the woods. She froze, pulled Martha behind a boulder, waited until the hoofbeats faded. They ran back home without the berries. That night, Clara told Jonas. His face darkened, but he said nothing, just rose from his chair, went outside, and hammered planks over the windows. The children watched without speaking. The fire popped. The next morning, a rider came up the trail, alone. He dismounted slowly, glancing at the cabin, like it was a thing to be measured. Jonas stepped out onto the porch, shotgun in hand, calm. "Morning," the man drawled. Looking for someone. A girl, runaway, red hair about so high. Jonas didn't blink. Ain't seen anyone but my niece. The rider's eyes narrowed. That so? Storm's coming, Jonas said. You'll want to be gone 'fore it hits. There was a long silence. Then the man tipped his hat, turned, and rode off. That night, Jonas handed Clara the rifle. He showed her how to load it, how to cock it, how to steady her breath before pulling the trigger. She had never held a gun before. Now it felt like a lifeline. She didn't ask if they'd come back. She already knew. The wind carried whispers down from the hills, cold, hard whispers that slithered between saloon doors and chapel pews. The merchant had returned. Mud-caked boots, bitter tongue, and a thirst for revenge. He stormed into the village tavern and declared Clara a runaway. A thief. A cursed girl. A witch, he spat over a half-empty glass. Vanished like smoke, took my goods, my rifle, left me for dead. The villagers listened, not because they cared, but because stories like his bought drinks. He told them there was a bounty, good coin for whoever brought her back, breathing or not. Word traveled fast, faster than Clara could imagine, faster than snow melt in spring. Bandits, hungry for gold and blood, caught scent. One villager, a wiry man with yellow teeth and no loyalty, knew Jonas. Knew he'd been spotted once, years ago, taking a red-haired girl through the trees. He didn't need much convincing, just silver in his hand. That night, he leaned close to the fire and whispered a direction. Storm clouds swelled over the valley like bruises. The first boom of thunder cracked through the sky as Clara closed the chicken coop. She felt it deep in her bones, a tremor that didn't belong to weather alone. Lightning split the heavens. Then came the howls. The bandits descended just after midnight. 3 of them. Faces wrapped in cloth, torches burning like devil's tongues. They circled the cabin, whooping, snarling, hungry. One hurled fire through the window. The curtains caught, then the wall, the roof. Inside, chaos. Jonas grabbed his rifle, kicked the table aside. The children screamed. Clara shoved them toward the back door, into the pitch-black night. Go, she cried. Martha, take Bess. Thomas cried out, his doll lost in the smoke. Clara dragged him into her arms and shoved him out into the rain. Jonas moved like a ghost, 1 step, 1 shot. He caught the first intruder in the neck. Blood sprayed across the firelit wall. Then another lunged at him with a hatchet. They collided like bulls, grappling, slamming into the hearth. Jonas swung his axe up in a brutal arc. A scream tore through the cabin. Clara turned at the sound of footsteps. Too close. A bandit burst through the side door, eyes wild. He saw her, grinned. She didn't hesitate. The rifle was heavy. Her hands were slick with smoke and fear. She fired. He dropped, his body crashing into the wall like a sack of meat. She stood there, frozen, heart pounding. Her first kill. The flames grew louder, hungrier. Jonas stumbled from the smoke, blood pouring from his shoulder. Clara grabbed his arm, half carrying him out the back as the cabin behind them groaned and split open with fire. They ran. The children, huddled beneath a pine, cried out. Clara herded them forward, into the storm. The trees swallowed them all, rain poured. Fat, cold droplets that soaked through skin and spirit. Lightning flickered above like an angry god's eye. Jonas collapsed in the mud. His breath was ragged, shallow. Clara tied together branches and canvas, built a sled with rope and fury. She pulled him inch by inch through the muck. Martha held a lantern, trembling. Eli scouted ahead. Hours later, they found it. An old trapper's cabin, half-rotted, moss-covered. The roof caved in on one side, but the walls held. Inside, Clara laid Jonas down and stoked a fire from damp wood. His shirt was soaked in red. She cut it away with shaking hands. The wound was deep, near the collarbone. She heated the knife until it glowed. He didn't scream. Later, as she wrapped him in blankets, he opened his eyes, dull and heavy. They took you, like you were nothing, he rasped. But you're everything now. to them. His hand found hers. Then his eyes closed. She thought he was gone. He wasn't. At dawn he coughed, lived, but only barely. The next day, Clara stared out through a crack in the wall and saw the scorched remains of what had been home vanish behind morning fog. They could never return, so she made a decision. She saddled Jonas's horse, packed a pistol, rode into town alone, cloak pulled tight, heart pounding. The sheriff didn't recognize her at first. Then he saw the fire in her eyes and backed, away from the desk. She laid the bandit's pistol down. A silver coin with a strange etching. Proof. He asked questions. She didn't answer. He paid her in gold. She left without another word. Spring melted the snow. The hills turned green. The wind softened. A new homestead rose in the next valley, just beyond reach of the past. Clara's hands helped raise its beams. Jonas moved slowly now with a cane, but he smiled more. The children ran free, unafraid. Clara taught other girls how to read beneath the birch trees. They came in small groups, some from far off. Word had spread. She rarely spoke of what came before. But some nights, she sat on the porch, watching the horizon, guarded, strong. A voice settled on the wind. They sold her because she could, not give life, but she gave it back, in 1,000 silent ways.